So hi everybody and welcome back. This is the C++ tutorial series for absolute beginners. This is video 100 and in this video we are talking about default value arguments for functions. So let's get started. Here are some examples and I take these examples, I copy them, and we are talking about these examples, what they mean. So important is this is not coding, these are examples to understand coding. So let's do this. First of all, we create here a declaration. Or how we can see this is a declaration because it has no body and this is a void, which means no return type. Name is point, and we have here 2 points, which is 2 int numbers, and you can see we are defining here default values. So you can see we can give this function default values, and default values means they will used when you don't provide values when you call this function. So you can see here we are calling here this point, for example, with 1 and 2, with the arguments 1 and 2, then this default values here will be not used. And then we have here the call point is 1, 2. But when we call point here only with one argument, for example 1, then the default value will be used, and important is this argument is then the first one, not because it's the first one, because it starts from back and then it goes to the front, so from right to left. So this one is then here. It replaces this 3, and you can see it will then called 0.14. And here is a special case. We are using no arguments at all, and then if we provided default values, then it is using both. So here 3 and 4. But we have to be careful about this one. Why? Because as a programmer we read just this name here, right? And the first impression is, oh wait, this function call has no arguments, which means the definition has probably also no arguments. So this is our first thinking normally. What I mean with that, normally when you see this one here first time, you will assume there is a function definition like this one with no arguments. But this is not the case, and that makes it hard to read a little bit, because like I said, we tried read the function one time and we won't understand it instantly. And here we have a problem with this one, because this has actually 2 parameters and is using 2 arguments, and we can't see that instantly, and we have to train things like that. So but here a tip, you can go of course with the mouse over the function, and there is a tooltip, and this tooltip provides information, and we have to start to rely on this tooltips a little bit. What I mean with that, this tooltip, when we read it, it says void point. So this is our our function declaration, and then it says int x equal 3. So it is showing actually our function declaration with this default values. So it says this here has default values, this call, right? And the same goes here as well. This one here, when I hover it, it's very small here, and I hope you can see it. It says this one has also default values 3, 4, and if you not provide it, I will use it. So that's very important and very a little bit confusing for a programmer, because like I said, when we read this one, we think first, oh, this function has no arguments, which means no parameters as well, perhaps. And now we can see sometimes they still have parameters and arguments, because the default values are arguments later for this one, and you can see this then called this one here 3, 4. And if you have problems, use this old trick, which is right click, hover over the function, right click, and then go to declaration, and then it will jump normally to the declaration of point, or to the definition, whatever. It normally jumps to this place here, and it's showing what it contains. But hover over with your mouse and relay a little bit more about this tooltip if your IDE provides it. That's very nice and helpful. So let's continue. So this is the first step. Now let's see, there are some more steps which we can see, and here they make some more examples how you can use. Let's go through them. I think I will skip all the other ones because there are some more complicated ones, and at start it's good that we know only some. And if you have problems in future, just watch this again in the documentation why it is different, because there are variations like all time. We are learning all time the basics, keep this in mind, and there are many variations. So let's go about this function calls very fast, and let me explain what they do. So here we create a function, and we have two parameters, and we have here a nameless parameter, and we skip this nameless parameter because a nameless parameter means in general this parameter here, int, without a name is normally not used by the compiler. But there are cases where you can make it that it is used, and that's a little bit too complicated for a beginner. So we are skipping a little bit this nameless parameters because we need for that a special video. So let's skip this one. But we still keep in mind and try only to understand what they are showing. So here they are showing that they have here a int, and they try to assign a value it, and they say trailing arguments can have default values, and that's very important. There's only the trailing arguments. So when you want to provide arguments, you must start with the trailing arguments, which means you start from right and then you go to left. All right, so you start from here, first provide here an argument, then you are allowed to provide here an argument. That means trailing arguments. All right, this one, let's go to the next line. We can see here again a function declaration, and we see here this one is now on the right side and has a default value, and it is our trailing arguments because it started with the right and it goes to the left, and the left one don't need an argument then. But of course you can provide here one too, like here on top. But important is just start with the last one from right to left. So let's go here one more step. We have here void f, and here we have a special case. This is again a little bit advanced, which means we start here with an argument at the first place, and then we have a no argument, and that is exactly against that what we just learned, right? We just learned we should start from right and then go left. But this one is a special case because here they say default supplied by previous, also cars, this one here, cars default supplied by previous declaration in the same scope, which means because these two functions are the same functions, so this is a function overload, and no, yes, and this one is not a, yeah, it's a function overload, and this one has here provided a default value, and this second one is using this function default value from here, and then you can provide a default value here. But you know, let's skip this one as well. This is a little bit for later after we learned the simple ones here. Let me see if there is something interesting as well. I think yes, let's watch this other one. So these two things here you can more or less skip as a beginner. If you understand, it's nice, but it's not, we are not training this at start. We are training more this kind of stuff this kind of stuff here, but let me see if we need this one too. So here we are creating again a function g, and then with a default value from the right side. This is right, we start from the right side, we go to the left side. The left side must not have a function default value. That's okay. This is nameless. We skip again this nameless thing, and we go on. We have here a function definition. So this one is a declaration, this one is a definition. Oops, Control Z. So this one is a definition, and this function here is declaring a new function inside. So you see, it's declaring a new function, and it says int with a default value on the left side, and it says error not the same scope. And this one is again related to this example here, which means here we can use this on the left side because it's taking this one overload function, overload function's default value on the right side. That's why this one is allowed. But here you can see this g and this g is again an overload, but the problem is they are not in the same scope, and that's why this one and this one is not allowed, but this one and this one is allowed, because they are, these two are in the same scope, these two are not in the same scope. And we learned scope as well. I think I should not show these two functions here because it's a little bit more at once, but if you understand this, it's good. But we will not make examples. Of course, you can make try to make examples for yourself, but it is very important that you understand at least this start point here. We can provide default values. We can if we start to provide default values, we start from right and then we go to left, and we can call them. We have not to use these default values. We can use them, but normally it's similar to a variable. You know what I mean with a variable is when I create, for example, int my telephone number. Of course, I provide here most time a default value as well. Oops, not like this one, like this one. And this one is also just a default value. I can use it, but normally I'm not using it. That same goes for this function. These are default values. You can use it, but you have not used it. Most time you are not using them. You are calling with arguments which you need. Not all time, and that's why we have this option here. So with that said, I stop here. We will make examples later, but we have to talk about a little bit more functions, and this part we will definitely skip. And yes, with that said, I think I stop here. And if you have any questions or any complaints like all time, write it in the comments. And see you in the next video, and good luck like all time.